and welcome to Let's Talk Rangers on your Monday night podcast. I'm your host, Kyle McLean, and as always, I'm joined by regular co-host Ross Chalmers. Ross, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good. What a result for Rangers over the weekend. I'm delighted to be back and talk about it again. And we've made this joke before, Kyle. It's good to do the recorded podcast because on the live one, we always make mistakes. So this one's good because we can go back and scrub it all out and no one has any idea. But yeah, no, it's good to be back. As always, it's great to come on and talk about a Rangers win. And also there's some January signings to talk about. So yeah, it's all there for us.
Yeah, it'd be good if you could do that with Rangers and just scrub out the mistakes at the start of the season. But listen, it was a fantastic win, 2-0 against Aberdeen. Rangers went away up to Pittodrie in terrible, terrible conditions. I think the word that I would have coming away from that is it's another routine win. It's another game where Rangers largely had control. Started off Rangers on the off, going for it. Like I said, largely got control of the game, get a really, really good goal from another set piece, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point in this. You said it. I think it's one of my favourite tweets that's ever gone out in the Let's Talk Rangers Twitter account, and that's that we are set piece merchants. And see if that's the case, I'm all for it. I've already got Fry on the back of my Rangers top as well. Then further forward in the game, another set piece that Rangers have. One of the most ridiculous VAR decisions. I've not heard anybody apart from Chris Boyd, weirdly enough, on Sky saying that was he doesn't agree with the rule, but he's the one that said that shouldn't have the goal should have stood. No idea what the referee was seeing there, and a Tav penalty in the second half. There was lots of good performances. If I was to say that was a performance, I would say that was like the Sasa Papac of performances. Nothing amazing, but everybody just 7 out of 10. A real routine win that you want when a team's in the title race.
Yeah, I think we're 8 episodes in now, Kyle, and that's the first time you've mentioned Sasa Papac. So I can't believe that. I thought it would have came after the first or second, so fair play to you. But look, I agree with everything you've said, really, there. I think you summarised the game well. I'm absolutely delighted with that result. I think, obviously, Aberdeen are having a difficult moment this season. They've just sacked Jimmy Tillene last week, but Pittodrie is always a difficult place to go. And I know we had that great result against them through the week at Ibrox, and that was a very comfortable game. But I think you always expect something very, very different going to Pittodrie. But actually, the game turned out to be very much what it was like at Ibrox. Actually, I thought Rangers were more comfortable in the game. And I think we'll come on to it later in the podcast. I think if Rangers had a little bit more creativity in that final third, I think the scoreline would have been a lot more flattering for us. I think we would have really been able to kick on and take 3, 4 and 5 off of them, to be honest, because I just thought it was that type of game. But overall, I just think it's brilliant. I think coming into that game, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast that Rangers had a really tough run of fixtures coming up, and it was going to give you a real understanding of where Rangers were in this title race under Danny Rule. The last 7 games, they've obviously had that result against Hibs at Ibrox. Away at Tynecastle, they lost, but then they've beat Motherwell, St Mirren, Celtic away at Parkhead, and they get the double over Aberdeen. That's a remarkable return based on where Rangers have been at the early stages of this season. It's fantastic. I'm sure we'll talk about it plenty of points throughout this podcast, how well Danny Rule is doing. But overall, I'm just absolutely delighted that Rangers are still where they are. They've clawed their way back, and we are well within this title race. So yeah, overall, absolutely delighted with the result. It's great getting the double over Aberdeen so quickly, and in quick succession, going up there and making it so comfortable. Can't get any better. So yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon with that one, Kyle.
Yeah, that's it. It's really good, especially when the teams round about you win difficult games. Hearts obviously getting that the goalkeeper sent off. They have the luck about them at the minute. They have the momentum behind them. I mean, I'm not saying for a second that Hearts are at the top of the table purely based on luck, but it was a very good performance. You've got to keep pace with the teams around you when you are in a title race. But Ross, something that stood out to me on Tuesday, something that stood out to me on the game on Sunday, and that was Rangers midfield really, really controlling games now. I think this is the first team lineup between us that we've got right this season. Because we hummed and hawed whether or not about to include Aasgaard in that team lineup. I'm sure Danny Rule hummed and hawed about including Aasgaard in there as well. A lot of supporters, there was some doubts, a bit of debate about him starting. But again, did he have the best game? No, but can I see improvement in Thelo Aasgaard's games as he's going on? The other thing in terms of the midfield, I thought you tweeted it out as well that Raskin and Diomande, this is the game that they have to have big performances in. I just felt they gave us a really good base to go on and build upon. The stats that always impressed me the most was, I think it was in last week's game, I think Conor Barron had 8 recoveries in the game. Raskin had 8 and Diomande had 6 tonight, which just shows you the amount of work they've done. What do you think about Rangers midfield in particular? Do you think rules they're sort of becoming a cohesive unit? And what do you think of Thelo Aasgaard in particular? Because he is the guy that's getting a lot of criticism from Rangers supporters at the moment.
Yeah, I think overall that Rangers midfield is starting to get a little bit more established under Danny Rule. I think he's worked out who the kind of players are that he can rely on. And I think if we were all honest, when Danny Rule came in, we would say that Raskin and Diomande would be involved in his midfield because he's the 2 best midfielders we've got. I think coming into this game, there was probably a little bit of nervousness amongst the support because Conor Barron, has done so well in the last few games. And obviously, unfortunately, he's been ruled out for 8 to 12 weeks now. And I think coming into a game like this, Conor Barron's probably the type of midfielder you would expect to have in there, the type that, like you referenced there, can make a lot of recoveries, can win a lot of duels, can cover the ground really well, and he always puts himself in the right position at the right time. And I think that's where the credit goes to Diomande and Raskin, because they've come into that game, they've played as a bit of a pairing, like 2 6s really, and I thought they absolutely dominated the midfield. And it was something I was speaking about before the game, and we spoke about it before in the podcast, so I won't go over it too much and run over old ground. But these are the type of games that I expect Diomande and Raskin to dominate. This is the type of game I expect their quality to show, and for them to make the opposition look like they're nothing compared to them. And I thought you seen that at spells through the game over the weekend. I just thought they really put their stamp of authority on the game. Diomande is just so good at winning the ball sometimes in tight areas and retaining it and playing it off. And it looks like such an underrated part of football. And it really is, because it's such a huge part of it that someone can just nick in there at points, disrupt another team, and retain the ball when they try and press you to get it back. And Raskin, I thought, again, just covering the ground, his ability to drive the ball forward, we've seen that several points during the game. Just thought overall the 2 of them were brilliant and they deserve a lot of credit. And I keep saying this, I just want to see that every single week. Now, I understand professional footballers will have a dip. Sometimes they'll have a bad game. That's fine. That's understandable. But I think most weeks I want to see a 7 or an 8 out of 10 from the 2 of them. Because if they can do that, Rangers will have a much better chance of success this season. So the 2 of them deserve a lot of credit. Thelo Aasgaard himself, definitely starting to get better. I still think there's a lot more to come from him. So I'm going to actually look at that as a positive, because I think he's definitely starting to have more of an influence on this side, not just the goals. In terms of Rangers build up, he looks a lot more comfortable in there. Still want to see a wee bit more intensity about him. And I'm hoping that'll come over time. And maybe once he gets used to the rigorous nature of Scottish football, that's going to come for him. But I do think he's definitely starting to play more of his part now. And let's be honest, you referenced it there at the start of this segment about kind of having doubts about putting Aasgaard in. But really, we don't really have any other options right now. And I think you've seen it from his celebration where he's kind of, it's cup in the ears and things like that. That's someone that's clearly feeling the pressure a little bit. He's feeling the pressure. And for him to get a goal like that, take it so well, which, by the way, don't know if we're going to come on to it, but I'll touch on it now. Obviously, a great set-piece goal, and we'll leave that part of it. But the finish itself is a really good finish. Like, that's not easy. The ball's drilled across, and he obviously loses his man really well. And it's a really controlled finish on the kind of half volley into the bottom corner. It's a really well-taken goal. So, yeah, he deserves credit as well. I'm hoping with more confidence, you'll start to see more from Thelo Aasgaard. I would like to see Rangers go into the market and bring in competition for him, because I think that kind of role we need to fill, and hopefully that then kicks him on again. But I do think you're starting to see more and more from him. And this was something I said to you the other night of the game, Kyle, when he brought him off the bench at half-time. I think Danny Rule really likes him. I can just tell. I don't think he had to do that the other night at Ibrox against Aberdeen, where he brought him on at half-time. I know Mikey Moore had picked up an injury, but he didn't have to go to Aasgaard. I think he's trying to build his confidence over time, and I think that tells me that the manager really likes him. So I expect to see him in the team going forward. I want to see this run of form continue. The goals are there. That's fantastic. We always want numbers from our players. A little bit more in terms of involvement in the game, and I think we're going to start to get a really, really good midfielder there. And that's exactly what we're expecting with Thelo Aasgaard when he came in this season. Paid 3.5 million for him. I'm expecting him to have a big role in this Rangers team. And I think he is starting to do that. So very much like Diomande and Raskin, I think Thelo Aasgaard deserves a lot of credit for that performance over the weekend.
Yeah, like I thought Asgard was good. It's funny how we as fans look at it. That's his third goal in 5 games, and they've all been cultured finishes is the term I would maybe use for him as well. Because you're right, that was a really, really good finish, but he's a player that I think Rule looks at and goes, I can make a better player out of you. You've got all the attributes. You just need to believe in yourself a wee bit more. It was that press conference when he came out. I always get my lefts and my rights mixed up at times, but like, see when he's talking about the when he was saying is it he plays on the left hand side and he can't, his body's not open enough. I was like, that is a manager that cares about player, and just noticing that wee simple switch. And the other thing as well, even looking at Diomande, I was so impressed by him today because he was okay. He was in the midfield, but he was playing an almost such a different role to what he was playing on Tuesday night, and he still was very, very good in the middle of the pitch. But that's the frustrating part for me this season, is that they haven't done it enough. It's just, hopefully we're in that wee sort of patch of consistency and we keep it going. Again, I know Rangers weren't too defensive today, didn't have an awful lot to do, but I do want to just comment on this, Ross, and that is the sort of, that's a few games now we've seen Souttar, Manny, Fernandez. I think there is a bit of a partnership there. We talked about it. We said it away as far back as the Middlesbrough game when we were sat there. Look, Fernandez, if he's got a bit of a, somebody who's a bit more experienced sat next to him, it looks like he could be a better player. I think even John Souttar, I mean, I'll touch wood wherever it is as close, as quick as possible, but I think John Souttar's looked quite good since he's come back as well. And I don't think that's an accident. He looks leaner, he looks trimmer, and I think they're both very good foils for each other. It must be nice for Souttar when he turns round and he's looking and he's like, right, Manny, have you got it? And he looks up and he goes, right, cheers, Manny. So it's the two of them are forming a nice partnership at the minute as well, Ross.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they complement them each other really well, actually. And I think that was one of the big things we spoke about with Manny Fernandez, and that, okay, you can see that there's still a lot to improve amongst his game, but I think it comes from experience. And I think if you then partner him with an experienced centre-back, you're going to get a lot more out of him. I think in recent weeks, Manny Fernandez looks a lot calmer, both in terms of when he's in possession and when he's out of it. And look, I'm not saying he's perfect. Absolutely not. But I do think the last couple of games, there's not been as many of those kind of heart and mouth moments that we've had with him in the early weeks. I think he's really starting to kind of hone in his game now. And I think that type of centre-back next to him in John Souttar is exactly what he needs. You know, at this stage of his career, he needs someone next to him that's dependable, that can talk him through games. I thought there was a really good one over the weekend at Pittodrie where he actually drives out really well with the ball and he just takes that little extra touch instead of maybe playing the pass or playing it over the Aberdeen backline. He loses it in Aberdeen break. Now, thankfully, they didn't really create much from it. I think it's actually that Milanovic cuts inside and Souttar has a really good block. And you see straight after it, John Souttar goes over him and he speaks to him and he says, Manny, come here. And he's talking him through the game and he's telling him that's not the right moment to do that. And remember, we need to do this. That's exactly what he needs. So completely agree with you on Manny Fernandez. John Souttar as well. I do think he looks a lot better from that break. And of course, no player ever wants to pick up injuries. It's always really frustrating there with John Souttar when he picks up these injuries with Scotland and we all seem to suffer. But I agree. I think he has come back and he's looked a lot better. There doesn't seem to be as many kind of defensive shaky moments, the same as Fernandez. And I think the two of them will get better together. I don't see a Nasser Giga or a Cornelius breaking back into this side very easily. Now, they might get rotated in throughout the season. But for me, like we spoke about in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I would go with John Souttar and Manny Fernandez for the rest of the season because I think they've shown over the last few weeks that is a really good partnership. And I think they make each other better. And I think that's exactly what you want. That triangle with the goalkeeper and the two centre-backs is crucial in any football team. And I think Rangers have a real established three in there now with Butland, Souttar and Fernandez. Go with it because I think they're all getting better as the weeks pass. And if they continue to get better, we'll continue to pick up results. And hopefully there's something at the end of the season for us. So yeah, let's stick with them. let's get behind them, because there will be mistakes that come. We know that Manny Fernandez is going to make mistakes at this stage of his career, but let's not write him off completely when he does it. Let's get behind him and let's see that development, and we will get a better player out of it, and ultimately Rangers will get more success out of that.
Yeah, it's just, I agree with you there. I will find it, unless we revert to a back five, I can't really see Cornelius and Giga coming in unless one of the two of them has a howler. Plus, Souttar and Fernandez are both they're both Rangers players anyway, and I think you would always try and, unless they were outstanding world class, you would always try and give a bit of preference to your own players from that. But before we move on to Scott Fry and Manny Fernandez and the set pieces and all that, there was an instant in the game, and it was from a set piece. It was the ball comes in, Manny Fernandez, eyes on the ball the whole way, goes up with Mitov. For me, Mitov is looking for this almost, as in, the goalkeepers are a protected species. Goes down in the box, the referee awards the goal, doesn't see anything wrong with it. And then John Beaton tells the referee to go over and have a look at the monitor and VAR. And at that point, we all know that the goal is going to be overruled. I've not seen a single person, I've not seen anywhere where it said that other than Chris Boyd, I'll hasten to add. But you know what it's like on Sky. It can sometimes be a bit of the Punch and Judy show. And I don't want to say controversy for controversy's sake, but I can't see how that's not stood, Ross. And even the thing that makes it worse for me is, see if you go back and watch the game in full, literally 2 minutes later, there is a challenge between the Aberdeen defender and Chermiti, which is on the edge, maybe about 20 yards out. And it is identical to apart from the goalkeeper putting his hands up in there, and the two of them meet, and the referee doesn't even give a foul for it. So I don't know why it's different.
Real frustration about this one for me. I think if anyone that follows me on Twitter would have seen me calling out the Scottish refereeing standards here again, and it's something that really frustrates me, because look, Rangers aren't the only team that suffer from this. Everyone gets bad decisions against them. In fact, we've seen one for Dundee United over the weekend with Arojo at Parkhead. I mean, it's a clear red card that isn't picked up by VAR. Now, again, I'm not just picking that. Everyone suffers from bad decisions. Every team in the league. It's just another one that popped in my head. The frustration for me here is that I don't really know what else Manny Fernandez is supposed to do if he wants to challenge for the ball, because he is only looking at the ball coming into the box. He doesn't. You see those ones sometimes where, and this is what Willie Collum and the VAR team claim a couple of times, that if the player kind of checks the goalkeeper to see where he is, then they take that as, oh, you're trying to impede the goalkeeper. You've looked where he is, you're jumping into him. That doesn't happen. So Manny Fernandez is looking clearly at the ball coming into the box, and he gets up really early, which is exactly what you would teach your centre-back to do in this situation with any set piece. Get up early, give yourself a chance. He's up. He's got to use his arms as leverage, because anyone that jumps has to use their arms as leverage to try and get that height. And he gets up, and Mitov makes a mistake. It's a clear mistake from the goalkeeper. He comes out, he's not there, he's too late, and he can't get there. And I think he knows it. So he's up, and he kind of just throws his arms, and he's claiming for a foul. Everyone that you listen to about this is surprised that this has been chalked off. I just think it's one of those decisions, again, where I don't really understand what VAR are looking at. Because for me, that's what else do you want someone to do in the box when they're challenging them for the ball, right? All they can do is get up and give themselves the best chance to win that header, and that is exactly what he does. So again, it's one of those that it's relief for me, to be honest with you, Gil, that this hasn't came back and bit us, because that is, I don't know if you're the same as me, but I always feel that way now when decisions go against us. I think this is going to come back and bite us, like we're going to suffer from this. So I'm absolutely delighted that didn't happen. But again, it's one of those moments for VAR where I don't really understand what they're looking in that room. I don't get it. And I think everyone with any sort of understanding of football looks at that footage and goes, I don't really understand what that's been chalked off for. And there's been far too many of them this season. And it's not just against us, it's been against everyone in the league. So the refereeing standards up here have to improve, because I just don't think it makes Scottish football look very good to the outside world. I think people look in and they look at that and go, get no understanding of how that's been chalked off. That's not a clear and obvious error. Do you know what I mean? That's the big thing for me. it's supposed to be for clear and obvious errors. That's not what that is. That's not a clear and obvious error from David Dickinson. He allows that goal because he thinks they're both legitimately challenged for the ball, and Fernandez gets there first. So yeah, I'm looking for us to come on to the positive aspects of set pieces now, because that one has really frustrated me. And like I said, I'm just really glad that Rangers weren't, punished by that, and they got the 3 points in the end.
No, look, I never want to come on here and sit and talk about refereeing decisions, because you could literally fill every podcast up with terrible refereeing decisions for either team that we, the teams that we go and see, and the opposition. Like there's always bad decisions, but you can't let that go. I don't know. See, for me, I don't know if that's worse than the remember the Jefte one against, was it Dynamo Kiev? When he did, I can't believe you
reminded me of that. That was a shocker. That was in Europe as well. That was in Europe, yeah.
But it's so. But the thing about it is you would expect. See, when you see decisions like that, you're like that's fine. But then you expect to see them back the other way, and I don't ever recall that being the case. But anyway, it was a shocking decision. But you're right. Let's come on to talk about the positive aspects of the set pieces. I saw this on X earlier on, and I couldn't stop laughing at it. So I'm going to plagiarize it for this. And it was, the fry is no surrender. And that could not be any more correct, because Rangers are a real threat from set pieces now. Since Scott Fry came in, and it's funny, Ross. It's harder to look at the screen in Ibrox and not see Scott Fry on it than it is to see him on it now. So, but because he's always there, always standing at the. You and I have joked about it. He is obviously very passionate about this, because whenever there's a corner or a free kick, he's always in the edge of the box, telling people where to go. All the players are talking about it. Fernandez has talked about it on more than one occasion now. A lot. There was that phrase that he said. He's like, it's Scott has told us how important second phases are at set pieces, and just hanging around the back post, you're likely to get a goal from it. And it was brilliant. As you said, the movement to peel away, it's not an accident that Thelo Aasgaard had that amount of space in the box to go and finish that ball so nicely. And the other one, even the Manny Fernandez one, that's a free kick we've seen a couple of times, like just a wee cheeky dink right over the top. How impressed with have you been since Scott Fry's come in this season, and how are you happy that Rangers are set piece merchants?
Absolutely, I'm delighted about it. I think we've spoken about this several times. It's such a huge part of modern football now, and Rangers had to get on board with it. I think I seen a really interesting tweet earlier that it's only Hearts and Rangers in the league that actually have a set piece specialist, and both of them are at the top of the charts for set pieces. So it shows you that it does make a big difference, and it's not just one of those kind of made up roles that football clubs put in sometimes, and no one has any understanding of their influence. I think you can clearly see that with Scott Fry. I think psychologically it's a big thing now as well, because I think opposing teams know of our threat, and I think it brings a bit of nervousness amongst them, because they know that any set piece we get, we have a real opportunity of scoring because we're so good from them. And I think, like I said, I think psychologically that makes a big difference. I think he's looked at the squad as well, and I think that maybe comes into the selection sometimes with Danny Rowe. I think that's maybe why Aasgaard was getting in the team originally and things, because he does bring that little bit of physicality and height. I think he's given that back to the manager now with delivering goals. But I think we've just looked at it and went, where can we get the kind of 1% more out of this squad? And I think they've looked at set pieces and think this is something that we can really use when we're struggling in terms of open play, and we know that we need a little bit more in there and we'll have to go into the market for that. Let's look at the set pieces to try and get us through this period and get more results out of it. I think that's exactly what we've done. Funny thing is, you obviously score from that set piece from Aasgaard. The penalty is a set piece as well, again, right? It's another game where we haven't scored from open play, but no one's caring. No one's caring. This is what football's all about. If you can still go and score goals and you aren't creating lots of chances, of course, long term you need to look at it. But as a support, you just enjoy it, that you're scoring goals and it doesn't really matter. So yeah, delighted. I think we spoke at this before as well. If you've got someone like Manny Fernandez in there, I know his goal was chopped off tonight, but if you look at someone like that, then he is the target for all the set pieces. I know there's lots of different movement from Rangers and they're trying to get him free, but he's always a kind of primary target. And actually, he should score from one in the first 10 minutes of the game. So I'm delighted about it. Just before we move on as well, in terms of the set pieces, because it does come under it, I just wanted to say that Tav penalty, absolutely brilliant finish. I mean, I was really happy for him tonight because there has been a lot of criticism of James Tavernier this season, and it's been deserved, absolutely. And I think we can all see that he's coming towards the end of his career now and he's starting to slow down. But that is a top penalty. You know, that takes real composure in that moment where you know you've got an opportunity to put your side 2-0 up. And I was really happy for him getting that moment in front of the Rangers support as well, because I think you could see how much it meant to him tonight, actually. I thought he looked a little bit emotional in that celebration. Just that big moment for him. He's maybe not had as many of them this season. Maybe gives him that feeling again that he is an important player for us until the end of the season, until we can replace James Tavernier's numbers. He's really important for us. So yeah, another two set pieces tonight win us the game, Kyle, but I'm absolutely delighted about it.
Yeah, it was a great run from Gassama to win the penalty in the first place. Great composed finish from Tav. But yeah, as you said, it's just, yeah, since Scott Fry's come in, it has made a real difference to the set pieces. But I mean, it's not a coincidence that I think that's Rangers scored 12 set piece goals this year. I think we're scored the most amount of set pieces out of any team in the league, and it's where we are. So I'll happily.
He's definitely signing of the season, isn't he? Definitely.
Yeah.
There's no one close. Scott Fry is definitely Rangers signing of the season. I want to see that in the kind of end of year awards. It's got to be him. That would be an absolutely tremendous party, by the way, if they'd done that. That would be so funny. But yeah,
most improved.
It's been unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give him the top goal scorer ball as well. That's what you want to see as well. But listen, I think that just about wraps it up in terms of the game. What I do want to talk about, because it is January and it is transfer season, and since we were on last Thursday, there's been so many links, a good few players to talk about, Ross. So let's just go and get into them. I'll give you some of the background. You give me your thoughts on these players. Kieron Bowie, a guy that's been rumoured that Rangers have registered an interest with his agent. I've been asked to keep up to date if there's transfer inquiries here. 23 years old, 8 goals in the league. I think that's from an XG of 5.8. He's had 3 assists as well. You know what you're getting with Kieron Bowie, as you do with virtually every Rangers player player that Rangers have been linked with this season, and it is big physical presences. Kieron Bowie's a guy that knows the league. Every time I see him, he seems to cause central defenders, every team issues. The sticking point from a lot of people is that I think the rumoured fees Hibs are going to want 6.5 million for him. What do you make of this, Ross? Do you think this is a guy Rangers should be signing? And if you say no, you're getting punted. And what do you think of that fee of 6.5 million, that rumoured fee? What do you think of that?
Well, in terms of the player himself, I think he's a really good player. I think he's shown that over the last couple of seasons for Hibs, and you referenced it there. His physicality is the big thing I think everyone sees when you watch him. A relentless presser as well, like very good at recovering the ball. And I think that's something that all teams look for now in their forward line, that players that can really press and make a difference in that forward line. So that's a big thing. I think if you look at his statistics this season, I think he's got a goal or assist. It's 1 and 2 basically. So I think the big thing that everyone looks at for Kieron Bowie is his goal return. And I think a lot of people look at it and go, that's not really prolific. But the thing I look at is I'm not really sure we would be able to get a player like that if he was a prolific goal scorer, because he's got the physical side of it. He's obviously recently became a kind of Scotland international. He's getting into squads for that. And I think if he was a kind of prolific goal scorer at this stage of his career, I don't think Rangers would be able to get him. I think he would be moving on to much kind of, not bigger clubs, of course, but top 5 leagues, for example. I think they would take a chance on a Kieron Bowie. I think Wolves were linked with him earlier in the window, and I'm not surprised. So that part of it, I can understand why people look at it and go, why would you sign another player like that? We need goals up there, and he doesn't deliver them every single week. But I think, again, Rangers might look at that and go, yes, but there's raw attributes there that we can develop and kick on with. And very much like the Yusuf Chermiti signing in the summer, clubs look at the big physical strikers now and they look at that as a win. So they might think, okay, He might not have that goal scoring record yet, but we can work on it. The underlying numbers are there. We can work with that. In terms of the fee, 6.5 million, I'm not sure. I think that's maybe a little bit inflated. I think for me, I think a fair valuation would be between the 3 and 4 million mark. What I would say is that it's Hibs player. You know, they can ask for whatever they want. They're well within their rights to say 6.5 million and that's it. If you want them, that's what you need to pay. That's exactly what I'd want Rangers to do with any players, any clubs that are interested in our players. So I don't have any problem with them valuing their player or inflating the fee. That's absolutely fine. For us, I'm not completely convinced that would be value for money right now, but that's maybe me having the kind of outlook of Rangers in previous seasons where 6.5 million was, you know, quite a big fee for us. We spent 8 million on Trimiti in the summer. You know, we've just spent 4 million on Tochi Chugwene, 3 million to our Romans. The club might look at this and think 6.5 million for a boy at this stage of his career who's only going to get better is fair valuation, and they might go for it. So it's going to be interesting to see. But if you just have to ask me simply, would I sign Kieron Bowie if it was possible? The answer is yes, I would definitely sign him.
Yeah, it's just like, again, you know, totally respect he's a Hibs player and all that stuff, but you can admire a player from another team. He's been very good this year. I think, you know, you're mentioning there he's not prolific and stuff like that. I think he's only 2 goals behind Lawrence Shankland this season in terms of what's been scored. So I mean, he's in and about it, and he's in with a shout for being top goal scorer for the league this year. The next couple of players, well, I'll separate these players, but people might see why I want to bundle them together, and I'll instantly start here by saying I'm always dubious when the double loan signing for the same club comes in. I'm getting thrown back to remember Phil Bardsley and was it Lee Martin came under Paul Le Guen from both of them from Man United. Lee Martin was rotten. Phil Bardsley actually turned out to be an all right player and have a good career with Sunderland, funnily enough. And then
I'm glad you didn't mention those Newcastle loans. That's the one I was thought you would mention.
Just about to come on to it. The Newcastle 5.
Yeah.
So
that was awful.
Anytime you're seeing multiple players coming and being loaned from the same club, maybe it is just a bit of scar tissue. But, you know, when I've had a wee bit, you know, taking a step back, had a wee bit of a look at it, maybe I can sort of understand it. I'm nowhere near as convinced on these two as a player like Kieron Bowie, say. But the first one I talk about, Dan Neil, Ross, you know, the guy, he's been at Sunderland his whole life. When I was, you know, reading that he was the captain during their championship promotion, really good at, you know, controlling the play, not featured much this year. And I still to confirm this, but I think he's only got 6 months left on his deal at Sunderland as well. So that might be looking at a fee to get in. What do you think of this? Do we need a midfielder, central midfielder? Having just signed Chukwueze?
I think we do need another central midfielder. He wouldn't be that kind of profile, wouldn't be the first choice I would go for. I think I would want someone that's a little bit more creative in there. I have watched a bit of him over the weekend, and I've spoke to a couple of people that have better knowledge of Dan Neil in that league than I do. And everyone seems to say he's that kind of midfielder where he is really composed on the ball, you know, and he will give you that kind of ability to kind of dictate the tempo of the game. And to be fair, that is something we do need at times. I don't think we have that type of midfielder in there. So I can maybe see why the club are looking at it. Has the physical stature as well. I think he's over 6 foot. So it's one of those ones for me, Kyle, where I don't know enough in the player to completely rule him out. I'm the same as you. When I see that kind of double loan thing, I get a bit of a fear as well, because for me, it comes across as an agent push. You know, it's like we've got a couple of players who we need to get rid of. Is anyone interested? But I'm hoping that's incorrect, and Rangers have done their homework, and everyone's going to be put off by championship links. That's just the way of it. The Joe Rothwell scarred everyone recently, and there's plenty of players in the past that have done that as well. But I think the more I read about Dan Neil, I can certainly understand why Rangers would be looking at this type of profile. I'm not completely convinced. I would like a more creative midfielder in there, because I think the game over the weekend kind of shows us that maybe in Scotland you could get through those type of games without that kind of dictating, you know, composed midfielder. You maybe just want a little bit of creativity in higher areas. But again, I fluctuate in that all the time, so I'm not going to sit on here and claim that that's completely 100% for me. But yeah, not completely convinced by that signing, but I can certainly understand why Rangers are linked.
Look, I'll just be completely honest here. See, when I was reading up about him, the similarities to Joe Rothwell frightened me a bit. Player that's done really well in the Championship, controlled games for middle of the park, let the team push on. But Joe Rothwell, it's just too similar. I'm not saying the guy couldn't do it up here. Maybe if it happens, I'll be supportive for it. But at the minute, I just think the money could be better spent elsewhere. But again, if it's on, it's come towards the end of his deal, it's only 6 months, it might not be an awful lot of money involved in it. So, again, something to see. The next one, and it's the other player here, Romaine Mundle, young winger, largely plays in the left, looks pretty pacey from again, the very brief clips and things like that I've seen of him. Looks like he loves getting to the byline and cutting back. Still looks quite raw to me, this one, Ross. But my question would be is, if you've got a guy coming in that's going to play in the left for Sunderland, would you not just rather play Finlay Curtis there and develop him?
Yeah. I think from my perspective, probably, but I think we can all tell now that I don't think Danny Rule fancies Finlay Curtis at all. Just at this stage of his career, he might see potential in there, but I think he maybe looks at him and thinks you've just not got enough right now for me to make an impact. And that's okay. That's fine. Every manager's allowed to make their choice on players and make their decision. And hopefully Finlay Curtis gets a loan elsewhere and he starts to develop more. And I think that's a big thing for us. We just don't give enough of our young players minutes. So that's definitely something we should do. In terms of Mundle, I looked at some footage of him. Looks a good player, but injuries has been his kind of downfall, and he doesn't have a lot of first team football. And I think, for me, is that what we require in this transfer window? I think we need people coming in that have lots of first team football behind them and experience that can really kick us on. And we referenced it earlier, Tochi Chukwueze, he comes in with 150 games behind him when he's only 22, right? Romaine Mundle is 21, and I think he's played about 40 first team games maybe. And yeah, the same as Dan Neil, he's not really kicked a ball this season. So again, not a signing that I would be completely upset about if we made it. But for me, it's just not really an area I would be looking at right now. That kind of right-footed left winger doesn't seem to be something that would be on my priority list. And I think January is just one of those windows where you try and get as many of your priorities as possible. And he just doesn't really fit that for me, Kel. So yeah, not one that I would be definitely pushing Rangers to sign, but we'll have to wait and see if he comes in.
Yeah, I feel the same about those two as well. Like, I don't think it's things if they came and they were here, then you would accept it and get behind them. But I think there's other areas that need improving before we go out and sort this. Last player I just want to talk about, and there's been rumours of this, and I just want to confirm to everybody, it is 2026. We've not gone back in time. Steven Gerrard's not the manager anymore, but Rangers have been linked with Andreas Skov Olsen. I find the profiles we have been linked with this window so fascinating. I'd love to know why Kavanagh would go for a Skov Olsen and not a Czerny. Both Wolfsburg players. I get the age is different, but in terms of the output, but just having like a very brief look at the stats, and he's not featured an awful lot this season for Wolfsburg. I think at the moment he's currently got a muscle injury. I think he's had a couple of muscle injuries throughout his career. But Ross, I'm looking at some of these stats when he was at, it must have been Clermont under Club Bruges here. There's 30 games in a season, 9 goals, 7 assists. The next season, 50 games, 26 goals, 8 assists. Next season after that, 27 games, 8 goals and 5 assists. I know that's very crude numbers, but what do you make of this link? Is this a player you can see coming into Rangers, and would you see this as a loan, as a permanent signing? Because Skov Olsen seems like a player that might be out with our budget.
This is one that I'm a little bit surprised that this rumours came back, and it must be one that's been on, Skov Olsen must have been on Rangers' list for the last 4 or 5 years. It must just be one of those players that once he becomes available, we're going to make our move again. This one really excites me. And I might be going back 3 or 4 years when we were originally linked with him. And I think there was a lot of hype behind him at the time. I think the fee at the time was rumoured to be 6-7 million when he was leaving Bologna, and he went to Club Brugge. Then he obviously had a really good time at Club Brugge as well and got that move to Wolfsburg. I would be absolutely delighted if we can sign Skov Olsen. I think what you're seeing there is a winger that if he gets consistent game time will deliver numbers. And I think that's what we need in the final third. I think that is what we are missing. We are missing creativity. We are missing people that create chances and take chances. And I think if you could add that to the right-hand side, I think that would be huge for us. Like this would definitely be a signing that I would be behind. In terms of how that deal would look, I'm not sure, because he's not played a lot of football in the last couple of years with Wolfsburg and he might have a little bit of injury issues. I wonder if it's a loan with an option to buy. Now, maybe that option might still be quite high, but it maybe won't be that kind of 10 million mark that we maybe would have expected a couple of years ago. Maybe you're looking at a 6-7 million for this boy, and it gives him an opportunity to see if he can kind of rejuvenate his career again. But this is certainly one I would go for. I understand the reservations regarding his injury record, but I think that's a winger there that would deliver you consistent numbers if you can get them in the park. Now, again, I know, caveat, we've said that about a lot of players coming to Rangers. If you can get them fit, you're going to have a great player there. I wouldn't rule him out completely yet, because if you have a look at his injury record, it's all kind of minor things and he's out for days and things like that. It's never been anything too serious, thankfully. But yeah, he would definitely be one for me that if we had the possibility to sign him, I would go for that, because I think he's a signing that would make a big difference in the final third. And I think that is exactly what Rangers are looking for towards the end of this window. I think that's what we need to prioritise. They need to prioritise players in the final third that can make a difference, especially in games that are tight and we haven't been able to create those chances from set pieces. We need to prioritise open play, chance creation. He would definitely be someone that fits that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, I'm just happy from a selfish point of view to strengthen the Rangers Bologna links as well. With that and Hilander, I think it would be the only two players that have played for Rangers and Bologna. But like, do you want to know what makes it almost an absolute certainty that we're going to go and sign this guy, Ross? He started his career at Northland.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? And actually, I looked at those numbers earlier, and I think at Northland he had 45 games and 25 goals or something like that. So the fact for a winger to have that type of return in multiple seasons is unbelievable. I think that's the thing that attracts me to him, because I'm like, if someone can do that, okay, they don't do it every single season, but if they've been able to do it multiple seasons and you're bringing them to a league that, let's be honest, is not as good as the Bundesliga and probably isn't as good as the Belgian league at this stage, the Pro League either. If you can bring him here and he could potentially deliver those type of numbers, that's hopefully the type of numbers that would take us on and lift the title. So yeah, that would definitely be one for me that I would sign.
Yeah, and he's another Danish player that we would link with. It's not a coincidence. It ain't a coincidence that Stig Brøndby, since he's come in, he's like, you never know. It just, the things seem to be, since I heard this link, things just seem to be falling quite nicely into place for it. But to sum it up, I would take Bowie, I would take Skov Olsen, I could take or leave the two for Sunderland. I think that just about sums it up. But listen, that's another fantastic episode of Let's Talk Rangers, Ross. Thank you to everyone listening in. As always, the show is built around you guys, the community. So we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments or on any of our socials. You can get us on X. We're nearly at 10,000 on TikTok. So if TikTok's your thing, go over there, check out some of the videos that we do over there. But yeah, just let us know what you think about the transfers, any of the transfers we've discussed, anything from the Aberdeen game, what you think about that VAR decision. Let us know in those comments. And if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us a follow or a wee subscribe wherever you're listening. Remember, you can get us on all good audio platforms. Really important. If you are listening to us, give us a wee rating on there, 5 stars preferably if you think it's good enough. It helps every single podcast and it helps us reach more and more Rangers fans. You can find us on Spotify, Apple. I think I've already said that, but thank you to everybody for the continued support, and we will see you all again on the next one.